Something whispered a chilling phrase to me in the middle of the night. I live alone. Posted by Opinionated IMO. Like most people, I'd never witnessed supernatural events or paranormal experiences. I guess you'd describe me as a non-believer or skeptic. At least I was before now. I'm a regular guy who works a 9-to-5 job and has a pretty mundane existence most of the time. I live alone and rarely have visitors or parties. To further clarify, my apartment building is brand new. As a matter of fact, I'm the very first tenant for this unit. Nothing I could point to would lend itself to explaining the story I'm about to reveal. I don't know how else to convince anyone reading this. I wasn't high, drunk, or simply dreamed the entire episode. Believe what you wish. I know in my heart I was fully awake and lucid when it occurred. I'm positive what I heard wasn't my imagination, a potent dream, or a lifelike hallucination. The way out is through the void. I immediately sat up and looked around in the darkness of my bedroom in bewilderment for the source of the mysterious directive. A number of emotions ran through me, not the least of which was confusion and fear. Who or what was behind the strange statement, and what did it mean? Was out a vague euphemism for death? Did it mean the final end of consciousness and pain? Maybe I'd overshot the runway of overthinking. It's amazing how many things the human mind is capable of in just a few seconds. The cryptic sentence could have a simple meaning. Not everything has to be a deep metaphysical metaphor. Once the realization that I should be totally alone in my home at that late hour washed over me, my thoughts immediately migrated to wondering if I was in actual danger, or had it been lucid sleep. If it was only a dream, then I was safe and psyching myself out for no reason. If it was a genuine external message from an unknown source, then I really wasn't alone. The hair on my arm began to stand on end as the possibility expanded. Goose pimples covered my nervous flesh. I felt paranoid and highly vulnerable. After the surge of adrenaline began to dissipate, I started to feel foolish. No one would break into my house to whisper an open-ended enigma in my ear. That was an unlikely notion. I began to relax as a soothing mechanism. My higher logic directed my thoughts to the most rational and calming possibility. It was all a dream. Just as my heartbeat was returning to normal and I was about to close my eyes to lay back down, the chilling phrase from beyond repeated. The way out is through the void. I shot out of bed and raced for the bathroom. I'm not a wealthy man, so the locked door and confined space served as my unofficial panic room. Whatever level of relief it afforded was short-lived. The way out is through the void. The unexplained speaker was very close now. My bathroom isn't large, and whatever entity kept offering me that nebulous pearl of wisdom was right there, inside the confined space with me. While it was repeated in a calm and motionless monotone, the acoustics magnified both the volume and timbre. I didn't dare turn on the light. I don't think my heart could have handled seeing what was there with me. Instead, I unlocked the door and fled from my psychological tormentor, blindly running into walls and furniture in the dark. Ordinarily, I'd know the internal layout of my home like the back of my hand, but I was too rattled by the abstract invasion to focus. This may seem like a bizarre statement to make, but the lack of specific threat or intent from my unseen intruder terrified me more than if I'd heard a roaring chainsaw. That would have at least signalled homicidal intent and given me full motivation to flee to spare my life. My surreal experience was something else entirely. The repeated statement was delivered with a cool, calm demeanour, and yet the implication and intentions were intangible. I fumbled around until I found my front door and unlocked it. Outside in the cool, pre-dawn air, I felt my sense of calm returning as I put some distance between myself and the invisible sage of wisdom sequestered in my house. I was too frazzled to care if any of my neighbours saw me wandering the neighbourhood in my nightshirt and underwear. Modesty be damned, I was away from the vague threat. Or so I thought. The way out is through the void. I almost screamed when it was repeated again. I was half a kilometre from my haunted residence, and yet the unseen phantom was keeping full pace with my hasty retreat. There was no safe haven. My stockinged feet were soaked from the balmy dew on the grass, and the brisk, cool air burned my aching lungs. If there had been any question before of my consciousness, it was fully gone now. I was absolutely awake and unable to escape my insistent messenger. Not once had it occurred to me to reply back. That was previously a bridge too far. In fight or flight response scenarios, I'd obviously chosen flight, but that clearly wasn't working. Changing tactics to better adapt, I found the courage to address my unseen orator for clarification, but then stumbled with what exactly to ask. Was it similar to a mythical genie situation with just 3 wishes? Was there merely a limited potential for exchange with this shadow keeper of the void? I wasn't certain of the parameters and didn't want to waste the unusual opportunity on pointless formalities. The best way forward was to ask general questions that verified broad answers. Hopefully, I would receive a response. For all I knew, the messenger's entire vocabulary consisted of those 7 ominous words. I felt like a damned fool for wandering the darkness of my neighbourhood in my nightshirt and wet stockings. But it was a first for many things. I didn't know exactly where to address my lurking phantom. I raised my head slightly and asked out loud, "What are you?" Luckily, I didn't have to wait long. You know what I am. Any reassurance I might have felt from receiving a response to my query was short-lived. The implications were stark. I didn't know the identity of this invisible entity addressing me with any certainty, but I had my suspicions, and none of them made me feel better. With such grim possibilities of what was speaking to me in mind, I couldn't bring myself to articulate them. Suspecting terrible things was better than knowing. It was denial in its purest form. Is the void that you speak of what we call death? I finally asked with lingering dread. Yes, came the sobering reply. I swallowed hard. My wet feet were freezing in the chilly night air, but that's not something you should ever focus on when the master of the pit solicits a solo audience with you. I tried to find the silver lining in the morose, mostly one-sided conversation. Are you saying that when I die and pass through the void, I'll achieve immortality? I could hardly believe I'd summoned the courage to ask such a leading, highly optimistic question to my grim, unseen companion. My desire to know the truth about the great beyond finally outweighed my utter terror about the situation. I think they call that fool's courage. A telling, morbid silence fell over my cadence in the woods. I'd always been physically alone in the eerie pre-dawn moonlight, but suddenly I felt I'd been personally abandoned for asking the question. Minutes elapsed in awkward silence. When no response came to my query for clarification, I finally had an answer to the meaning of what out meant in the repeated refrain, at least as definitely as I was going to receive from the one of few words. Maybe it wasn't allowed to answer the monumental question about what, if anything, comes after this. More likely, few ever had the courage to ask when the opportunity came. Either way, I wasn't about to do anything hasty to accelerate my exit through the void to find out. No matter how frequently my morose night visitor suggested it, it will come soon enough. And that's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. If you've enjoyed tonight's scary story, then don't forget to subscribe and click the like button and the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload. If you have any scary stories you would like narrated on the channel, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.